Well, a very, very happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is February 16th of 2026, and I hope everyone had themselves a very good weekend. I know I did. It was a busy weekend for me. The weather was on our side, which we haven't had that type of weekend in quite some time. It's still in the middle 40s, and I would say he's still a little nippy. I want to say nippy outside, right? But, it's the time where you can open up the windows, turn off the heater or AC, whatever you got on, and it feels good. Feels fantastic outside. But no, I had a good weekend. I went down to the Mount Washington Library on Saturday for their reopening, and I was actually representing Enlightened Studios, doing a little public appearance. And I felt like, I feel like that's important, right? Every once in a while to get out, see this public, hands on, feet on the ground. I think the term I heard, it was boots on the ground, right? Want to be there. So stopped by there on Saturday morning, and I never been out there before, but I was gonna be there to support it, and I was actually very surprised of the setup of the crowd that showed up. To be honest, I guess when Mount Washington was doing their renovations of the library, they actually used another facility as a temporary placement, and they it looks really good, I think, for the location, for how big it is. The parking isn't that great. I actually had to park a few buildings over. The fire station came out and supported the community. We heard from a couple of the congressmen and women, the district area, council area, of the area from District 26. I think it was great. I really enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the experience, and I got a chance to take a look around. They have a conference room. They have a new kids section, and they were doing face paintings. They had those sugar cookies with those laminate, designs on it. It says Mount Washington on it, and then they had kind of like this new elderly adult section where there's a little fireplace and there's a couple chairs, comfy chairs that goes around it. Overall, it was a good experience. And then I head over to the Price Hill Library as Grassroots is under rehearsal. Got a chance to check that out for a little bit. And, we're kind of finalizing because Grassroots is officially 2 weeks away, a Friday from this Friday. And there's, 2 weekends of performances. There's a total of 8 performances, 4 per weekend. And if you haven't gotten your tickets, I say you got to get your tickets. I think everyone is doing a phenomenal job. Can't praise them enough in this, doing rehearsals. I've been watching since the beginning, attending rehearsals. Now, something to note here on this side. I'm a part of the team. I am partaking in the sounds. Now, I'm also part of their social media content. So what I'm doing is that I've pulled sound and music from the places I know where I could get music from, and I'm trying to place them as the vibrant sound in between scenes. So my goal is to find a music and cut about 30 seconds of it that slips in between scene 1 and scene 2 and so on and so forth, that sets you the tone for the next scene. And it's a unique experience. I've never actually done that before, but I've been able to do that here. And I had myself a really fun time doing it. I kind of just shared it with the team here. We're going to kind of mix and try to clean some things up. But normally there would be and this is a secret between you and I, no one is really supposed to know this. Normally there's a live band behind stage doing the music. Unfortunately, the band was not able to do the music for this production, so we're kind of creating our own little music in a sense. And so, but got a chance to go out to rehearsal, see that. Been to church on Monday, and it's been with all the snow, with all the, being sick the last couple weeks. Honestly, getting back in the swing of things, we woke up quite late the last couple weeks also to get out to service. And our service, our church, they have multiple services. And so if you don't get the first one, you get to the next one. But I'm kind of like this old person that doesn't want to deal with the crowds. But they moved our first service up even closer earlier in the morning. Now at 8. And you guys may say, "Oh, that's not too bad," but it's bad when you have 3 kids. You got to get up, get dressed, and get out the door to service before 7:45, just so you can get them checked into daycare. So we decided we're going to go to the second service. And I have that fear of, all right, well, we're not going to get good parking. We're not going to get good seats, because the second service is where it's a little bit more crowded. And, we were able to get seats. So it kind of just blew right over my head. But that was my weekend. Came back home, just relaxed the rest of the weekend. And that was it. With all the sports, kind of took myself away from the sports for a moment. Got a chance to watch a little bit of college baseball. In hindsight, watched the Bearcats beat up on Jacksonville. And is it the Gamecocks? Is that what their name is? Jacksonville State on Friday, 11-5. And these are just kind of exhibition games for now. They kind of have these series, first couple series in a different state, whether they're home or away. And it's just fun to watch baseball, right? I mean, baseball spring training officially begins. I want to say this Friday, this Saturday. Reds versus Guardians. You could catch it on, I want to say it was WLW. I'll have to find that out for you. But, you know, college baseball is just that indication of, hey, baseball starts here in a couple weeks, or it just, it starts here within a week. And you kind of get that vibe. And I've always loved college baseball. And it wasn't until I moved out to Kentucky where I started following college baseball a little bit more. The one argument I will have for college baseball that I don't think a lot of this world really knows, and I got to give them a lot more credit where credit's due, are those who play in the Mideast to the East Coast for this season. If they came out here to the East Coast or the Midwest and they played baseball, then I commend them. Because I'm going to be honest with you, out on the West Coast, the Mountain Coast, Texas, weather is normally lovely. Mid-60s, maybe a little mid-50s, but nothing is compared to out here. And, the groundhog said we have 6 more weeks of winter. Hopefully we don't see it, and hopefully he's wrong. But I've been out to Bearcats games over the last few years, and trust me, it's been cold. We have to bring blankets. I wouldn't bring my kids out there. They'd be miserable. But, so if there's anything that I could honestly recommend, to be honest, is that college football, college not football, but college baseball begins a few weeks later. I would love to watch college baseball begin at the beginning of March. Now, I don't know when high school baseball starts here, but they're in the same boat. And I understand high school, they kind of have to, how do I say this? They have to get prepared. They have to have that season before graduation, which is in May, right? All activities need to be done. They can't roll over the season into the summertime, especially for their seniors, right? But baseball needs to start later for college. I don't know how far later, but they need to start just a little bit later than what they do now and avoid the cold weather that we endure out here on the East Coast. But with that being said, baseball season is a week away. We've been talking a lot about baseball over the last several weeks. This is intentional because there's not a lot of football conversation right now. I could see here 5 days a week and tell you the same story, how we don't need Trey Hendrickson, how we need X, Y, and Z, and we hopeful to sign Joe Flacco again. I can give you my little fantasy free agencies like I did for baseball, and maybe I do, but Max Crosby's on that list. But the harsh reality of it is that for me, I'm going to sound like a broken record after 3 days. There's a couple of different stories and different takes that I can share with you about baseball as it leads up to spring training. And one of those stories comes from the Philadelphia Phillies last week and how Nick Castellanos was released by the organization. Now, there's nearly no specific reason on why Nick Castellanos was released by the Phillies. We could only assume it was an accumulation of things. Maybe he wasn't happy in the new role that he had with the organization. Maybe it was the incident that he had in Miami where he brought a beer after being ejected from the game to the dugout, which is obviously a big no-no in my opinion. But but it's also fair to say that Nick Castellanos has not played the best of baseball last season. You know what? Every player has that. And we were talking about this on our program last week. Was there a possibility or even a consideration on bringing back Nick Castellanos? Because I know he's not this Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber caliber player, but did he bring anything or did he offer any value to this Reds organization? Maybe he just needs a change of scenery. Well, all of those conversations come to an end over the weekend as we learned that the San Diego Padres have decided to sign Nick Castellanos. Now, the Padres are only going to pay $780,000 for this player. And the Phillies are going to pay the remainder of the $20 million that they owe him to play the game. Now, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're every other 29 teams should have been like, this was a steal. Now, the Dodgers are pretty banged up. The Yankees are pretty solid too. But, could you tell me that the Reds, if they wanted to offer him $785,000, which is the league minimum, couldn't afford it? Now, you'd have to ask where you're going to place him because you already have a DH, but could you afford it? Well, the Padres can't. They gone out, they signed Miguel Andujar, and it seems like, now we're kind of almost set, right? Because if you're the Padres, you kind of answer some of your questions moving forward. And one of those questions were who you are going to use at second base to first base possibly. And who is your everyday designated hitter? Well, I've seen a couple of different takes on it that Nick can be a DH, and sure he can if that's his role. But where is there an opportunity of him playing first base if he needs to be? I don't see why not. Jake Cronenworth could go play second base all he wants, and there you go. You really do have yourself now you have that DH open and, up for grabs that can be utilized. And we'll talk about this in our segment later on in this episode about the Cincinnati Reds bench. But I think I think this is a great opportunity for Nick Castellanos. I know a lot of people may have different opinions about it, and Unfortunately, if you are a Padres fan and you also feel the same way, that you're just, unfortunately, we're just gonna have to suck it up and take it with a grind of salt. But Nick Castellanos I still think can provide some sort of depth and power to a lineup when you insert him in. Yeah, you got to figure out where he's going to be at defensively, and that's always a big question, right? But he is going to be able to fulfill his need in Cincinnati or in San Diego in hopes to help the Padres win. You look at a division of the NL West that, is dominated by the Dodgers. Unbearable, right? And you're just trying to find anything else to keep yourself in that division alive. Because in hindsight, it's almost indicating that, hey, the Dodgers are going to go on and win the division and they're going to go on to represent the National League in the World Series. Well, if the Padres, and don't get me wrong, their time is ticking for an opportunity of success. And sure, they've won a couple of, they've been in the playoffs the last couple of years. They've been a top tier team, but they've never made it to the World Series, which I think a lot of people think it's overdue, especially with the time that they have with Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado. It's now or never. Does Nick Castellanos add to that now or never statement? Does Miguel Andujar add to that now or never statement? So, it was a little fantasy dream of mine, possibly to see Nick Castellanos as back in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. That was not meant to be. I hope that he's capable of turning things around and having more of a positive experience in San Diego. And I just wish him the best. It's a challenge, right? As a Reds fan, I don't want to face the Padres now, right? Because Nick Castellanos timed up with Tatis and Bogarts and Machado and Cronenworth. That's a dangerous lineup to deal with 3 to 4 times a season, just like the Dodgers. And so that is I'm marking those on our calendar, and I am grinding my teeth because I'm nervous about how the Reds are going to respond to that. Talking about the Philadelphia Phillies for a moment, I found it quite interesting when we heard a little bit about the reports when Kyle Schwarber reported to spring training camp for the Phillies. And even a highlighted name like Bryce Harper was surprised to see Kyle Schwarber, who didn't sign with the Reds. He expected him to sign with the Cincinnati Reds. And I guess it comes a little bit of a shock. These are top players of the team and they have high expectations and they're, stars for a reason. It's just, I think what baffles me, going back to understanding that Kyle Schwarber decided to re-sign with the Phillies. Sure, it was an extra $125 million, but it seemed to me now that, we hear reports like Bryce Harper and his comment that Kyle Schwarber was practically a Reds before this deal even happened, and the Reds kind of blew their opportunity. And it kind of frustrates me a little bit. I don't know how about you guys, but it honestly frustrates me as a Reds fan to think that Philadelphia as an organization, as a fan base, was ready to walk on Kyle Schwarber, knowing that he was wanting to go back to his hometown and his intent was to play for his home team. And he shows up to spring training. And it kind of, you talk about a missed opportunity this offseason for the Reds. This is a big slap in the face. Big missed opportunity. Knowing what we knew now, over $25 million. It still just makes it hard to believe that we couldn't offer that much more for the organization. I just can't stand it. I don't get it. Really have troubles with that. Excuse me. Um, but man, and we'll I guess, it's one of those things where, you win some and you lose some, and we definitely lost some here. Um, let's let's get to you here before we get into anything. Found it on I found it on trying to find the proper website here because I found it on Facebook, and I was going to use that one, but then I lost it for a moment. So before we get into some WWE conversations, every week we honor somebody, a legend. Okay, we honor a legend who broke the color barrier in some sport and we honor them in the month of February. This week we recognize Jackie Robinson for breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball. Now, we know that Jackie Robinson was not the first black player to play Major League Baseball, but he was the one who paved the way and broke down the segregation of baseball, becoming the first black player and to pave the pioneers of others in this sport. Jackie started out as a first baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers on April 15th, 1947, ending the decades of segregation in baseball alone. His impact felt both on and off the field as he served time in the U.S. Army, where he famously refused to move to the back of a segregated military bus. He was a prominent civil rights advocate supporting the NAACP and was the first black president of a major corporation. Chock full o' nuts. Chock full o' nuts. MLB universally retired his number 42 across all teams and honored his legacy by celebrating Jackie Robinson Day on April 15th every season, where everyone wears number 42. He may not have been the first black person to play Major League Baseball, but he is the one to pave the ways for legends we see today. It's kind of hard, and I go kind of reflect on this. Jackie Robinson is this icon, and you watch. Maybe you learned it through watching number 42, the movie, but this Jackie Robinson had to deal with a very imminent time. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of people out there that's been advocates and part of the civil rights movements that had to deal with a lot of negativity. And he's had other teams, his own teammates wanted him gone, right? And he had to overcome these obstacles that people are going to do everything they can to bring you down, to break you, because it only cost one negative impact and we're right back because we proved to them that the color barrier should remain up. Perfect metaphor example of that is watching The Incredibles 2, right? And in The Incredibles 2, the goal was that the heroes were still negatively looked upon because they caused more damage than not, and they still had to hide from civilization. Well, in Incredibles 2, the entire journey takes you on trying to build this image and slowly showcase that heroes are good for society. And here, we're going to prove to you by doing the cops' work, but behind the scenes. And I'm taking a part of this because a part of this film is you don't see a whole lot of negativity, but you do have the villain in this film doesn't want the superheroes to shine. So her goal is to do everything she can to knock out this hero and have her fail. Well, think about this for Jackie Robinson, among all the other sports that had, we talk about Athea Gibson and we talk about Willie O'Ree earlier this month. I'm sure not everyone was content with allowing a black person to play that professional sport. Some people try to hurt them on and off the fields. Some people tried to verbally hurt them. They did everything they could to make them break, because if they broke and they lashed out, that was the proof that they needed to show the world that blacks did not belong playing that sport. The resilience that a guy like Jackie Robinson had to the sport and to the Brooklyn Dodgers. You think about any other team a part of this historical time frame, just didn't make sense. The Brooklyn Dodgers had to be the one. And so, I find Jackie Robinson on the top of this sport list that we mentioned. I find him bigger than, Willie O'Ree, and they're all big in their, respected fields here. But he fits up there with me with guys like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, because baseball was a huge thing at the time. And it still is. It's still a big, huge thing. So this week we honor Jackie Robinson. In April, we will honor Jackie Robinson. And look, these athletes don't get recognized, should not be recognized once a year. They should be recognized on a daily basis, because if it wasn't for them, the sports wouldn't have evolved as quickly as they've had, and we wouldn't see what we see today, where there are dominance from all around. It doesn't matter what skin color you may have. So we honor Jackie Robinson, part of our Black History Month this week. I put a comment up on our social media pages. I encourage you to check that out and let us know how you feel about Jackie Robinson representing the colored community and breaking down the color barrier in Major League Baseball. Friday Night SmackDown was last night. I guess my dreams have come and gone. Last week, I predicted and gave a bold prediction wanting to see Sami Zayn win the triple threat match and advance to the men's Elimination Chamber. There, I wanted to see Sami Zayn win the Elimination Chamber and challenge Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship and go on to WrestleMania, beating Drew McIntyre to becoming the new WWE Championship. Look, I'm still standing by this storyline. I know we're not going to see it, but I still stand by this storyline where Sami Zayn has a gripe against Drew McIntyre. And then at some point, it almost feels like we do have to still see Sami overcome Drew in one way, shape, or form. So I'm almost convinced between now and whenever the careers have ended, we will see a Drew McIntyre and Sami Zayn again, because Drew is undefeated when it comes to facing Sami Zayn. With that being said, Cody Rhodes wins the triple threat match and goes on to advance and qualify for the men's Elimination Chamber. What I found interesting out of this match was that Drew McIntyre got involved. The intent of Drew McIntyre's involvement was to cost both Cody and Jacob the qualifying position in the Elimination Chamber, which would have meant that he would have attacked both Cody and Jacob in the sense of, well, we are going to face Sami Zayn is going to go walk away with the victory. But we didn't see that. Despite Drew McIntyre's efforts, we saw Cody Rhodes still win. Now, it's been going on for weeks on end. It doesn't quite make any sense because I don't see it really going anywhere. I see Drew attacking and ambushing Cody and Jacob. I see Jacob ambushing Cody and Drew. And I see Cody ambushing and attacking Drew and Jacob. And to me, it doesn't necessarily make much sense other than a triple threat match for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. So it begs to differ the question. Does it present itself based off of what we saw on Friday that Cody Rhodes has no other choice but to win the Elimination Chamber match, and it's going to end up turning into a triple threat match anyways? And then how would you guys feel about that? My problem that I see here is that you had 30 men and women compete at the Royal Rumble, and they've gone through that ultimate challenge to earn the right to challenge whoever they want at WrestleMania. And we know that the winner of the Elimination Chamber gets the sloppy seconds, and that's fine. But you have 6 men and women who had to qualify and go through an obstacle to get to this chamber match, to compete in this cage, and a chance to win an opportunity to face the other opponent. That turning into a triple threat match, I don't know. Look, I want to see Cody and Jacob in a clear one-on-one contest. I want to see it. I'm okay with seeing Cody and Drew again. But I feel like the WWE is building this up. I feel like the only build-up this has to lead to is watching a triple threat match at WrestleMania. And triple threat matches are only set up because so that you don't have whoever you want to, it doesn't tarnish an image only for the person who gets pinned. And so it saves somebody. Are you saving? So let's say we do get a triple threat match at WrestleMania. Does this save Jacob Fatu? And he wins, and does he pin maybe Drew McIntyre? So it says, oh, well, I'm not pinning Cody Rhodes. Does Cody Rhodes win, and he could pin Jacob Fatu? And almost in hindsight, Drew McIntyre will end up pinning Jacob Fatu. My point is, each and every year, the last couple years, we've seen one of these titles. Last year, we saw Bianca, Rhea, and Io have a triple threat match at WrestleMania. And now it looks like we're going to see that again, but on the male side of things. It feels like we've just gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm not sure, how happy I am to see that, to be honest. But that's what we're going to see. Excuse me. Here at the Elimination Chamber. And I feel like it kind of gives away of who's going to win. Cody Rhodes, since his return, has asked the question of who, has kind of been filling in this storyline. My mistake. This storyline of, I got this story to tell. And the story to tell at the beginning has been conquering and winning the WWE Championship. He's accomplished it, and he's had a nice run. I am struggling still to find the story that he's been told since then. And I feel like people are trying to find that same story that he first came back in and trying to retell it from a different perspective. And I think that's where I'm losing interest of. What's Cody's next move? How is he going to stay connected with the fans? And I've always seen Cody at some point turning heel. I mean, it feels like it's been addressed for the last couple months, but yet been revealed. So, I mean, I am, it's not still, I don't know. If you think about it, the triple threat match, if we did see that, would that be better than the Roman Reigns and CM Punk match? I don't think so. Raw is on Netflix this evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's from the FedEx Forum in Memphis, Tennessee. And we're just 12 days away from the Elimination Chamber. Now, Memphis is home to the WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler. And it has a lot of rich histories, echoes, and territory era in wrestling. It still shapes the atmosphere, and that energy needs to show up on the screen tonight. It's really WrestleMania, right? Online chatter is swirling about WrestleMania 42 tickets and the momentum. I know we ended off the last week in the conversation. So what is the WWE going to do as they continue to build towards Elimination Chamber, but starting to focus on WrestleMania, hoping to encourage fans to get tickets? The company needs fans buying flights to Las Vegas and U.S. viewers locking in their ESPN subscriptions for February and April. So, as a lawyer's longtime broadcast partner, Jim Ross, would say, business is about to pick up, or at least that's what's needed, right? So tonight on Raw, we will see the men's Elimination Chamber qualifying match as Gunther will take on Javon Evans, will take on Dominic Mysterio. You know, I was listening to the Busted Open podcast, and this was around the time following the Royal Rumble, and Bubba Ray said something very intriguing, which I do, when you look back on, I do agree. He didn't like how Gunther lost, and was not only lost, but he was the last man eliminated at the Royal Rumble, picking up the victory. Now, the WWE is going to do their best they can to erase that from everyone's history. But it seemed to me that there was an indication that Gunther was going to go on and have himself win the Royal Rumble, right? He ended AJ Styles' career. Next stop is the Royal Rumble match. He would go in, he would injure, or he would win. He would probably challenge Punk, and they would go on to have a WrestleMania match where Gunther probably goes over, kind of continuing his dominance. Well, I'm going to be arguing. I mean, I think if it wasn't, I don't know what the storyline was for Gunther getting injured. If he really was injured and they were cautious, so they made a secondary move. Well, whatever reason, Gunther lost. And if he was going to lose, they would have had him lose earlier or just not have him in it. But the fact that he was the last person, you can never, when you replay Roman Reigns' package for winning, you can never get that vision out that Gunther was a man who was eliminated. Well, Gunther's been on this, other than that little dispute moment, Gunther's been on this kind of tear, right? One after another. Would it be ideal not to see him go in and dominate and win and represent and enter that qualifying match? But look at the opportunities it would provide. I don't think Dominic's going to win, considering he has two other titles. I think he'll be at WrestleMania in a different way. Javon Evans, I would like to see in the chamber, providing a new opportunity for a young person. The women's Elimination Chamber qualifying match as Bayley, Asuka, and Natty competes against each other, all trying to cash their ticket in. As much as I want to see Natty move on from Maxine Dupree, I got a gut feeling that she will get involved. tonight. We're still asking who is the Masked Man. Raw ended last week with the Masked Man attacker attacking Austin Theory, indirectly helping LA Knight to secure his win into the Elimination Chamber. The Vision hasn't taken blows lately. How will Paul Heyman respond? Furry, manipulative, or both? Finn Balor has at least 2 more Raws to shine before his inevitable altercation with CM Punk. And then Becky Lynch and AJ Lee have some time frame settings themselves. The Raw heats up, and the Usos look to continue their dominance since winning the tag team titles. Jay hasn't yet been announced for a qualifying match yet. More intriguing is the possibility that WWE is building up towards a historic Usos tag team match at WrestleMania instead. Valkyria versus Morgan in a logical choice. Liv Morgan remains undecided about her WrestleMania opponent, but is expected this Raw to push Stephanie Valkyria further into focus as the likely choice. So, what is your take, and what do you think is going to happen on Raw tonight? Let me know down in the comments below. We got 2 triple threat matches for qualifying matches for the Elimination Chamber, and we have a couple build-ups for the upcoming PLE Elimination Chamber in just 2 weeks. All right, before we get into our final segment of the evening, I want to jump into and give you some promotional talks of Enlighten Studios, let you know what's going on with their programming. As I mentioned at the beginning of this show, they are in full swings. They got about, I'm going to say, 5 to 7 rehearsals left before their production, February 27th, going on through March 8th, called Grassroots. Get your tickets today. If you haven't gotten them, you can save some few dollars by visiting tickettailor.com. You can get your tickets at the door, a little bit more expensive, but endure the ticket, get your tickets, endure the experience. You don't want to miss this performance. Great crew, great actors for this upcoming production. And listen, you don't want to miss out. Set in the 1950s, a black family moving into a white neighborhood. This story about faith and trust and, so much. It's a spiritual statement towards it all. So get your tickets today. Also, Light Studios has a podcast channel available on all audio platforms called Light in the City. You can find a couple of podcasts posted weekly there from me, your host, Justin Trento, who provides an weekly updated news, stories, events, of what's going on, not only within Light Studios, but around the community of Cincinnati. And then Brittany Brown, who provides stories, inclusive stories of Cincinnati performing arts, and covers theaters, films, music, you name it. It is a diversity show, but you don't want to miss a single episode. Check us out on Light in the City. Follow us and follow Enlighten Studios so you can stay up to date with all their upcoming events. All right, I want to talk some Cincinnati Reds baseball for you. I want to kind of break something down. I feel like the most important part of a team comes from the bench. And how does the Cincinnati Reds bench look at right now? And I feel like we have some questions to be answered, which are some good questions for Terry Francona and the coaching staff. If you look at the field position, we know, let's break down on what we do know, right? Tyler Stevenson, Jose Trevino, this is all pending healthy. And I'm talking about this today, a few days before spring training. We'll have this conversation in upcoming weeks as we get closer and we see that starting that final roster put together because people get injured or people outperform others. But if I were to throw out, based off of who's available today in a rotation from field to position, Tyler Stevenson, Jose Trevino is your automatic catchers. Now remember, the Reds DFA'd Ben Roethlisberger since picking up Suarez. And really don't know how the catchers look beyond that. But whoever gets the starting nod for behind the plate, the other will get the bench spot. There's only 5 spots, okay? We also know that Eugenio Suarez will be a designated hitter for majority of the time. So he's a second spot. Now we have 3 spots remaining, okay? I got Sal Stewart at first base. He has a lot to prove. I know his third base coach or his AAA manager has kind of hinted that he could play a little bit of second, and I'm sure we'll see some time during spring there. But Terry Francona indicates that his primary position is going to be first base. And he, depending on his performance, while Matt McLain will have every day at second, unless Ellie De La Cruz is penciled out of the lineup, where this leaves Matt McLain to move over to short, and then Sal to move over. So, Sal Stewart, his primary focus is not third base, it's first base. And I get that. Depending how he develops throughout the course of spring training, it's going to see if they stick with him. Now, here's what we do know. He can play a little bit of second, and he can play a little bit of third, but that's not what we're trying to work on him. And if we don't have to put him at second often, then we don't have to. Matt McLain can play second. He could play short. I'm going to throw in he could possibly play a little bit of third. Okay? He is this guy who wants this opportunity. And, look, it's fine. Ellie at short, Brian Hayes at third, which I think is a strong suit at 5. In the outfield, I have Spencer Steer out in left. I got TJ Friedel in center, and I got Noelvi Marte in right. And I'm just placing them for now because I know things could get moved around. So how do you guys feel about that to start off with? I like it. Now let's go break down piece by piece because we already know Sal Stewart can move over to second if needed. So we have a second base cover there. Sal could play third, but I don't think they're going to push him there. Matt could play short, so that's where you're really going to get your his days off. Matt's going to have to play some short. Sal's going to have to play some second. So moving them around. So the question would be is, are we still comfortable with Sal Stewart being in at first base on an everyday basis, knowing that he'll have to move over? Now, when he's not playing first, let's say he's playing second, who's coming over to first? Well, that's where Spencer Steer comes in. Spencer comes back to first, plays a little bit of first. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I know the primary position for Suarez is the designated hitter, and I'm fine with that. I would like to, just because he's going to be your designated hitter, I would like him to be at least comfortable enough to play maybe a dozen games throughout the year, either at third or at first base, if possible. Because now, now we're trying to figure out if with Trevino and Suarez, we got 3 more bench guys. We just signed over the weekend Nathaniel Lowe to this organization. He's a first baseman. Now, if Sal Stewart's not ready, do you put in Nathaniel Lowe in there? And then put Sal Stewart on the bench, coming off of the bench as a utility guy, first and second, primarily, maybe playing around the horn as a utility guy until he gets there. Because I don't want to put Nathaniel Lowe off the bench and come to find out, and he could only play first base, and then we're kind of stuck elsewhere. I would like to utilize our bench as utility players, especially that first guy for that infield perspective. And my initial thought when I was trying to break up this conversation to talk to you guys about this today, I had CES coming out of the bench because he could play first, he could play third. And I feel like that would be a good conversation, dynamic piece. But we first have to see if Sal Stewart's good enough for first base. And if Terry Francona, not Nick Castellanos, if Terry Francona is comfortable and is confident with him at first. So if he is, then I say throw in Christian Encarnacion. You got Nathaniel Lowe down in the minors. If not, then I would put Nathaniel Lowe up there, and then Sal Stewart down there or in the bench with Christian Encarnacion as down in the minors. Then the question comes from what are you going to do with the outfield? Because I feel like you're going to get two outfielders coming off the bench. Well, one of them almost has to be Will Benson. No, he's a lefty. He's a power at bat that comes off the bench that could play right and left field. And if you have Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte, we know that Steer could come in and play some first base. I know we have a solid right field front with Marte, but I would say that Marte could, if he needs to play some third, I'm not going to say stick him out there every day of the week, but we're talking about trying to give some of these guys a day off, and Marte can also still play a little bit of third. I will say you would have to utilize that, and that's where Benson comes in the outfield as a left-handed also situation hitter, right? You play a right-handed play, you're going up against a right-handed hitter. You want that lefty at bat. And for me, this is where JJ Bleday comes in. He's your other right-handed hitter coming off the bench that plays the outfield. He'll come up with center field, and you can play the corners too. But then let's look at who we have beyond that doesn't quite make the cut. Well, we got Edwin Arroyo. If Ellie gets hurt, if Matt McClain gets hurt, Arroyo could be someone who we can easily call up. We're looking for depth, right? What about Tyler Callahan, which I feel like he may be positioned in, second, first. I know he plays a little bit of outfield, but I think second base is going to be a more comfortable position, if not center field. You got Blake Dunn. We got Dane Myers out there in the outfield. So we have a little bit of depth that we could work with. But here's where the challenge is going to be, because if you want, it's going to be a lot of writing off of the performance we see from Sal Stewart. So I think it's a clear indication here, heading into spring training, we're going to see a lot from Sal Stewart, and we're going to see how he progresses. And a lot of what the Reds do on a offense perspective, trying to come up with who's going to be placed on the bench come opening day, is going to be due to what Sal Stewart puts on the field for the next 6 weeks. Is that fair to say? Maybe. So all I'm saying is that I'm intrigued to see what this brings and holds. But I'm trying, when I try to look at the bench, because I still do think a good bench is going to help us win ball games. And we know Jose Trevino is the backup catcher, or vice versa. We know Suarez is going to be the guy as a designated hitter. And so when you look at the other players, Nathaniel Lowe, I feel like when you bring him up, you have to play him. So then it will either be Sal Stewart or Christian Encarnacion. You can't have both of them, in my opinion. And then you have to have Will Benson. And because you have two corner outfielders that could give you a day every once in a while in the infield, you got to throw in JJ Bleday. Because between Benson and Bleday, they will fill in the extra days off. I want to re-highlight something that's been clearly indicated from last season. Terry Francona said this in a press conference, and I've heard this from other sports reporters, that we have to do better giving these players days off, especially guys like Ellie De La Cruz. Let's face it, there's no clear backup player right now that's coming off the bench that could replace Ellie De La Cruz on the field. In order to replace Ellie De La Cruz, we have to move players around on our current field and then use our bench to fill in the empty slots. We don't have a player that can come off the bench to authentically really replace TJ Friedel other than maybe Blade. And you hope that then someone else doesn't need in the outfield a day off because you just got Will Benson. It's going to be a tighter ship because we are taking 2 of the 5 available slots. They're not versatile. Jose Trevino, Tyler Stevenson are one-dimensional, and they're focused. Hey, you're going to focus playing on behind the plate, and that's fine. So you eat up that. But what about Suarez? I've mentioned that, look, I'd want to see Suarez at least be able to play a few days at third, if not at first. Give Brian Hayes a day off. But honestly, I think that we're just going to focus him as a DH, and that's just another slot we're going to eat up. But it's going to be very important to make sure that this organization is giving guys like Hayes, like McClain, and like Cruz days off as needed. Now, let's be strategic with that, right? Maybe we could dive into that a little bit more later this week on how we could utilize those days off. But it's going to come with, Ellie De La Cruz could either be a DH or he could take the day off. And then when the organization, at the back end of a series, when an organization has a day off the next day. So that would be basically 2 back-to-back days. And then on the other side of that, so you get Ellie De La Cruz off in the final game of the series, you get the day off, whether it's a travel day or whatnot, and then Ellie De La Cruz comes back, and then maybe Brian Hayes gets that first day off. Strategy, right? And that has to be a similar cycle that we see on a monthly basis. Can we afford 5 days where we don't see Cruz in that lineup? We're going to have to. We got to do everything we can to prevent injuries, to prevent fatigue. And this was something that Terry Francona acknowledged last season, and he needs to acknowledge it again this year and actually do something about it. So, who would you place on the bench for the Cincinnati Reds? Let me know down in the comments below, but that is all the time I have for you guys today. Please be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to us on our Facebook page. And please be sure to follow us on our audio platforms. The TNC Sports Talk can be found on all audio platforms. And if we're not on your audio platform, let us know. We'll get on there. We will be back again tomorrow. I will, at some point this week, talk a little bit about what's going on our TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel as spring training gets underway, begin at the end of this week, and what we have in store for that. But until then, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate everyone who listens to this channel and this podcast. And please let me know and leave a comment in the sections below and possibly find yourself an upcoming episode. That is all the time we have. You guys have a wonderful rest of your night, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.